permission to speak. Shadows hide you. I am listening. Our paths converge.
So good to see you.
Hail to you. Never lose hope.
Here, Fred shouts.
I hear you. It has only begun. Fight on, Fred!
Welcome to episode 440 of Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. It is Thursday, March 28th, 2024 in the evening. Coming to you from Nomergon, Ohio, it's me, Edelweiss. From Northrend, Massachusetts, we have Wicked Good.
Hi.
From Teldrassil, California, we have Megasa.
Hello.
And from all around the world, we have you, dear listeners. As always, thank you for your reviews. If you would like to support the show but cannot do so monetarily, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast feed of choice. This always helps other people find the show. So, Life and Ladder. Wicked. Lucky you. You went to PAX. I mean, not lucky. You live in Boston.
I mean, yeah, I'm lucky in that they decided to put PAX East in a city that is an hour away. So,
yeah.
I took off most of last week because I knew that I was going to be distracted by the set coming out on Wednesday. So I took Wednesday off to do like a rare day stream. And then Friday I was taking off for PAX East and I just decided to take Thursday off because like, why go back for one day? So I usually do PAX East like one day by myself on Friday. And then I take the kids on well, usually it's Sunday, but this year we went on Saturday because one of the kids works on Sundays, which is a lot busier than Sunday. I'll tell you that much. We had to get out of the house by 6:45 to get on a train because normally we would drive, but I wasn't dealing with any of the traffic by that con on Saturday morning because the Saturday morning is the day that sells out. So, but I had a good time. I didn't try as many games as I would have liked. There was an altered TCG learn to play thing that was never really open, so I didn't get to try it. I thought about trying like the Star Wars Unlimited CCG, but it's like I don't really want to get into a paper Star Wars game. Like I shouldn't. So I tried a couple of video games and stuff here and there. I got some Pokemon shirts, and I'm friends with Tanya DePass, who's big into the D&D community. She did a live play series called Rivals of Waterdeep for a long time, and just wrapped that up. But so she and I have been friends since I was podcasting like on Relay years and years and years ago. So, usually we'll try to get lunch or dinner, in between the panels that she's hosting. So, I had, I met up with her for lunch after one of her panels let out, and she's usually got, a couple different people with her. It's never really the same people twice. Just like whoever is at that con who she's hanging out with. So she's introduced me to her friend Sam, and I didn't even catch the name because I have to wear like these loop earplugs in my ears when I'm at those cons just to filter out like all the crowd noise, or I'll just get overwhelmed immediately. So I didn't even really pick up the name, but we were waiting in line for food, and we sit down to eat, and her voice is sounding awfully familiar, but I can't really place it. And like, there's a fair amount of talk about Baldur's Gate, but that's not really unusual with Tanya because she streams Baldur's Gate. Like, like that's mainly what she streams now. So like her, and she does like one shot D&D encounters set in Baldur's Gate. Like she's big into Baldur's Gate. So like her talking about Baldur's Gate is like me talking about Hearthstone. Like it doesn't raise any eyebrows. And then, so we're talking, and we're talking about, streaming, and, she's this friend Sam is saying, well, yeah, I don't really get a lot of parasocial. I try to wave off some of the parasocial, entanglements by not taking subs and only taking donations. And there's this guy who was dropping like $1,000 donations in my stream. I'm like, her voice is sounding awfully familiar. And so she ends up going off to do something. And I say to Tanya, is that Samantha Beard? She's like, yeah, but don't say anything because she's incognito. So, and for those of you who don't know, Samantha Beard is the person who voices Karlach in Baldur's Gate 3.
I am so jealous.
So, she's an incredibly lovely person, by the way. Really funny, really like amazingly nice. Like I didn't want to be that guy like in the middle of like she's obviously like she's there, she's like she was wearing a wig to be going incognito, like obviously like I don't want to blow her cover or whatever, and like let her just enjoy the con. But that was a pretty cool thing that I was starting to put it together, and I'm like, okay, that's weird, but okay. So it was very cool. So
I imagine it's tough when your voice is so recognizable.
Yeah.
It's strange seeing videos of the Baldur's Gate 3 voice actors when you've played a few hundred hours of this game, because it's like this voice you know very well from a character you know very well coming out of a real human's face who may or may not really look like the character, but it's an awesome character, and she seems like a lovely person, so that's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, I've watched her streaming like her Baldur's Gate 3 runs as Karlach, and it's it's a little bit dissonant because like you hear the characters talking in that voice, and she's also talking in that voice, and it takes a little getting used to, but yeah.
I thought if you use them as your main character, you don't actually hear their voice that much.
I heard the voice enough when I was, I don't know, maybe I'm I don't know.
This is where I'm not super concerned that they're not doing additional content for Baldur's Gate, because the game is so deep. Like you can play through as each origin character and get like new stuff for playing as with them as your main character. Like, yeah, give me Larian's Divinity 3 or whatever new project they're gonna work on. I'm more excited for that. I want to use the Divinity combat system. How about you, Megasa? Or sorry, there's more.
Well, I was just going to say, like, while I was at PAX, I picked up the Aggro Demon Hunter because that was something that I could play while waiting in lines. So it was something that was fast enough that if the line started moving, I would be done pretty quick. And I cleaned up my win rate a little bit playing that. And then once I got back, then I switched over to the Rainbow Death Knight again after No Hands posted his list. Because we were trying, like, Blood Unholy after the set launched, and that was fun, but also it didn't run Froststrike and it didn't have CNE to finish. And then I've been steadily climbing, and I'm like at like 2200 right now, which I think is probably 11x range, because there are like 40,000 legends on Americas right now. So I would imagine that's probably, if it's not 11x, it's probably on the cusp. So and I'm not going to talk about that because that's pretty much the whole episode that we're going to talk about Decksplanations. So I will cede the floor, and we will talk about that in much more depth at the end of the episode.
Well, I guess how about you?
Well, I am definitely jealous of PAX. Wicked sent me a photo of some books that were like teaching using video games, and so of course I'm like, looked them up. It was using like narrative games as a structure for teaching, which seems potentially interesting. But the other non-Hearthstone thing that happened this week was in my long-running Pathfinder, which is similar to Dungeons & Dragons, Mythic campaign. We are level 20, max level, and we defeated the god who's been like the big bad of the campaign the entire time. I died on like turn 3, maybe turn 4, because I'm a wizard and my dexterity is not very great. And it was just a very small arena with large fireballs going off in it constantly.
You mean you can't counterspell a deity?
No, not even when you're level 20 mythic. Wasn't going to happen. So I cast Time Stop. I only got 2 turns of Time Stop, which is the minimum number of turns, which was very sad. But I did get off a few delayed blast fireballs this way. And that was very satisfying. Maximized delayed blast fireballs, made cold because it was a Phoenix god. So fire wasn't going to be very effective.
As one does.
So I did get a bit frustrated when I died. And then I had to sit there and convince my teammates not to spend the like next 2 turns trying to get me up again. I was like, I'm just going to die again within another turn. Just kill it. I play aggro in Hearthstone. Just do damage. Kill the thing. It's the control deck. It wants it to go long. So we have to kill it now. In Hearthstone, played a lot of things, did a lot of coachings on different things, but people have been asking me about Dragon Priest, and I had gone off of it because my win rate on it was like sub 40%. And then Outlaw Torn and Tex Muhami kept pinging me until they got me back on it with a list from Matt V, which ended up being similar to the list that Vicious Syndicate posted today, which is similar to a list that Fino has and that Pocket Train has from today and yesterday. So I've got 48 games of that over this week, and I am at 50%, which is an improvement over like 35. And I'm definitely still learning it, so I didn't want to. And one of its not great matchups is Demon Hunter, so we didn't want to make that our main thing that we're talking about today. But if you're interested in playing this deck, we're doing no Giants, no Matriarch, no Overheal except Clergy, because we do need that draw. There had been some lists that were cutting Clergy, but there's not a lot of draw in Priest right now. VS, Fino, and Pocket Train all have lists. Dreamboat, I feel vindicated. Dreamboat is in this this list. That's the Naga that does an AoE heal on minions and gets +1/+1 for each minion, since you have like a lot of like Whelp Wrangler things, which I also feel vindicated on Whelp Wrangler. Although, to be fair, Wicked was not upset about Whelp Wrangler in this deck.
I was more upset about Whelp Wrangler in the Reno deck than in the full Dragon deck.
In that case, fair. We're also running Magatha, which is worth it, even though it's very frustrating when you give your opponent funnel cakes. But such is what happens sometimes.
I personally never want to share my funnel cakes, so I understand.
It's not what, before I play Magatha, I make sure I've squelched them because I don't want the thank you emote coming at me. And you actually don't keep the funnel cake unless you have a Clergy. I'm pretty sure it's not correct to keep it, because even though you can get explosive turns with that, you can end up with like 15 power on turn 3, which has definitely happened to me more than once. But more often, if you just keep cake by itself, you're just sitting there stuck with like nothing but cakes in your hand and no actual minions. And because you don't have great comeback mechanics in this deck, we need to have early board to get chip damage in to not get killed by things, because we don't really have any AoE. You've got Amanthul to clear taunts so that your Zarimi can go through, or to copy your Ziliax so that you get an extra +1/+1 on your whole board, stuff like that. Or just to not die sometimes. It's just, so don't cut Amanthul, please. I certainly don't cut Amanthul for Hearth. I noticed Pocket Train was playing both Amanthul and Hearth. I don't know about that. I mean, he's doing well with it, but also he's Pocket Train, so he'd do well with a paper bag.
I mean, Amanthul is Shard of the Naru, and Shard of the Naru is an aggressive card in aggressive lists. So
exactly. Yeah. Plus, Amanthul gives you an extra legendary, which sometimes can be helpful. You can copy Amanthul if you have to. So that is definitely a card that you want. There was one game where I was stuck with, I had 2 funnel cakes and like nothing else in my hand. I top decked a Pip, so I just played it. So now I have 4 funnel cakes and nothing else in my hand. It's like turn 6 or something against a Warlock. Luckily, they're not pressuring me, but also they're just sitting there getting to their wheel turn, and I'm giving them no pressure at all. And then on like turn 7, I top decked a Clergy. And my hand was only 4 funnel cakes and a Clergy, and I made a full board in Zarimi'd that turn. And I killed them. So that was very satisfying. I don't, the deck can be frustrating because of the lack of comeback potential. Sometimes if you get in enough early chip damage, and it's not a paladin that's just healing endlessly, then you can sort of make a big board out of nowhere and then kill them. And mostly it's just Demon Hunter with like the big 6/5s can be a problem. Magtheridon, if they find it, can definitely be a problem. Most other things are winnable. I did have one warrior have 29 armor by the end of turn 4 because they had the Quillbore on 1 and then the Totem on 2, and I couldn't clear either for a really long time.
Yeah.
I didn't concede like on 4, and I probably should have and just spared myself. Because at that point, like, there was a ceiling on our damage, and it's not 60 on turn 4, only going up because it's a warrior. But overall, deck is hard to play. You really want your early pressure. If you have Clergy, be sure that you get some value out of it. counting your dragons so that you are going to have Zarimi off when you need Zarimi to be off, and just constantly calculating, like, do I need to play this for tempo, or should I hold it for my Zarimi turn, because then that like extra 4 from the free Drifter will be enough, or do I need the Drifter to not die? Like, when to play Drifters can be a little bit tricky. If you're having an early good start, then just play them. I mean, like, they're really good early, but if it's like mid game, you might want to save them until a Zarimi turn. I did see every once in a while it may be correct to use a Zarimi when you don't have lethal, just to really get bored if it's against a deck that can't deal with that. Like, I can almost kill them and then have an amazing board, clear their board, and then if it's not warrior, then that might actually be the correct play. If it's warrior, if you're that desperate, just concede probably. Or try it and know that you're probably going to be beating. So overall, having a fun time, and I promised I wouldn't say more than that on Dragon Priest for this week.
All right. This has been your Life and Ladder Decksplanations. So my Life and Ladder was a little grim this week in that the medication I had taken to kind of like self-treat my cough post-COVID ran out, and then after like a night or two of bad sleep, I had the worst asthma I've had since I was a kid. Like, real, breathing in, and I can tell that the oxygen I'm getting is less than what I just breathed in. So I went to urgent care on Tuesday and got prescribed a whole bunch of stuff: antibiotics, prednisone, which is a steroid, and a cough suppressant. So I am fully medicated and am doing much better now, as you can tell by the fact that I am not having to take a breath in between like every sentence. So yeah, that was unfun, and I really hope that this is not just the state of my lungs. Like, if my asthma has reverted to as bad as it was when I was a kid, and now anytime I like get something, it's gonna be bad. But just have to wait and see. Hopefully it clears up and I won't have to deal with this again for another, 15 years or whatever. But so after dealing with that, I have still been playing a bunch of Hearthstone, probably too much. So the thing about being on prednisone is it's a little challenging to sleep when you're on a steroid. So I have been playing perhaps more Hearthstone than I should be. And lots of Death Knight. I have like half a dozen different Death Knight decks. I've been trying various rune combinations. Some of them just don't feel worth it. There's not really, the payoffs just aren't quite there for some. I am still going to keep working on Blood because Vampiric Blood is kind of worth it. Doing my old Reno, but with 2 Vampiric Bloods. And Tony for when I get plagued. So that's not main deck. That's in the ETC, to be clear.
I mean, just main deck would be silly.
Yeah. So definitely refining that. Played a lot of Rainbow DK, which we're going to talk about, and post patch, which we'll get into shortly. I tried out Paladin, and I love it. It feels great. Post patch,
that makes me happy.
It's much more interesting to me when you don't just go, oh, they couldn't clear Wind Fury. So a hand buff I think was easier to figure out. Excavate might take me a little bit longer, but I like that we can play Shroomscavate to just excavate now. Like, it can just be get a little shield value and excavate. That's nice. But hand buff, I mean, we still have deckhand, we still have Leroy. The charge is what makes hand buff powerful, and that hasn't gone away. Deputization aura, turns out the lifesteal is the important bit. Like, yes, you can murder people with it, but it was kind of doing too much being able to do that. And being able to just lifesteal on all the minions. The secret sauce in this hand buff paladin is Geppetto Joy, or not Joy Buzz. That was the old one. Geppetto Toymaker or whatever. because you get back all the minis, you get back the mini plushies, you get back any deckhands you've played, you get back
Amethyst?
well, in Amethyst. Amethyst is a big one. Getting a second Amethyst is very nice. They don't expect that. I think it's the only Titan you can get back from Geppetto. And yeah, there's a lot going on. So, but I think we should actually talk about said balance changes because they're pretty substantial. So, Wicked, why don't you take it away?
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop.
Yeah, so we have patch 29.0.3. This was teased on Tuesday with balance changes to both standard and battlegrounds. We're going to focus mainly on the standard changes. There are a lot of battlegrounds changes as well that you can find them in the patch notes, which will be linked from the show notes, or you can just go to the Hearthstone website and find those if you want to go through those in detail. But we are obviously we're a constructed podcast, so we are going to focus on the constructed balance changes. So the dev comment to lead off this batch of balance changes is we hope you're enjoying Whizbang's workshop so far. We've seen you experimenting with lots of new cards and archetypes across most classes and finding a few outliers. This patch is mostly to weaken those outliers and offer a couple higher confidence buffs based on early data. They're using that word higher confidence again.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, we don't get much in the way of buffs in the patch that's like 10 to 14 days after the set comes out, just because there's not a lot of data and things are you can overshoot if you're not careful. So these are cards that are just severely underperforming that could use some help right away, and in classes also that were underperforming. That could use some help right away. But before we get to those buffs, we have a number of nerfs, a lot of them to Paladin, as one would expect, given how the first week and a half of the set is gone. So Tigress Plushie is going from 3 mana to 4 mana. Deputization Aura is going from +3 attack to +1 attack. And Shroomskavate is going from 3 mana, give a minion Wind Fury and Divine Shield to 2 mana, give a minion Divine Shield. The dev comment is Paladin is the biggest power outlier since the launch, with lots of damage from hand and healing. We like the overall play pattern of the deck, but we're making these adjustments to tone down those two overperforming aspects of it. And one thing that I know I've been saying a lot is it should be able to kill you with a big board or kill you from hand, but probably it shouldn't be very good. It shouldn't be as good as it is at doing both. And I know I've made the comparison to Samuro Apotheosis more than once in the Discord this week when talking about Deputization Aura, and that card is effectively Samuro Apotheosis that's not a 2-card combo. So it can afford to be, there's a lot of room for it to be weaker than it was and still be a perfectly reasonable Hearthstone card.
Yeah, I mean, just to put certain things into perspective, Tiger's Plushie has all the keywords of original Ziliax. I guess it doesn't have Taunt, but it was 3 mana. Like, the Taunt was very rarely the relevant part of Ziliax, sometimes, but just Divine Shield, Rush, Lifesteal as a combination in a hand buff deck is so filthy. It can be 4 mana. It's okay. And Deputization, I've been using it pretty much just for the lifesteal and have not terribly missed the 3 attack because, we're making our minions big. That's the deck. So, yeah, those still feel very effective at what they do. And I haven't done as much of the Excavate one, but being able to actually play Shroomskavate, like, instead of just killing them with it. Because there's always times before where it's like, well, I could play this Shroomskavate now, and I'll get the Azurite Dragon, but then what if I need it to actually kill them? And, like, you just want to give all your things +3/+3, but you're not there yet. So, yeah, I'm fully on board with all these changes, and Paladin, I'm excited to play it because now no one's playing it. It's delightful.
Yeah, I am sorry to see people leave it so quickly. I mean, this always happens to some extent when something gets nerfed. People
And with
run away,
Paladin gets
especially when
nerfed.
Paladin gets nerfed. But it's still, not the style of Paladin that people dislike, where it's just like, make a dude, make another dude, buff the dudes on the board, now we have more dudes. It's got that healing and comeback potential still. It's got burst still. So I haven't played it since the patch just because I haven't had a lot of time to play today, but I am excited to play with it, and I hope that people continue to give it a chance. And I'm glad that they didn't just like nerf it into the ground, but that versions of it are still playable and still have lifesteal and still have that style of gameplay. I was a little bit nervous at first that they might have over nerfed it, but Edel convinced me otherwise. And so,
what, did you run into her ladder or something?
just heard the stories, and I did run into a couple paladins on ladder when I played just briefly a little bit of priest today after the balance patches, and they were still healing a lot and clearing up my boards with the plushie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, three nerfs is a big balance patch for one deck, really, or I mean, it was like 6 decks, but but I mean, even so, there was a lot of room for that to be worse because it was just so far beyond everything else that was in the meta. So, I think the fact that Shroomskavate is probably the only Excavate card that's being run outside of an Excavate deck.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
That's a bad sign.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only other one is like Drilly because it's 3 Excavates, and
yeah.
So even if you're not all in on Excavates, the first 3 are sometimes the best ones, anyways.
Yeah, and even then, you're still running Cobalt Miner, and
well, no, but you don't have to. Is my point.
You
can just throw Drilly in something on its own, and it's fine.
Please don't.
It's just value. It's good.
So there was also a change to Hunter, Awakening Tremors. The worms are now 3 ones instead of 4 ones. The dev comment there is Hunter's another class that has overperformed in the early meta. Awakening Tremors is a card that's been played in almost all Hunter decks for some time now, and which can make for some really early snowballs. Shaving a little power from it should help keep other decks from falling too far behind as early as turns 1 and 2. This will also make, I know some of the Hunters were running Observer of Myths, which this will make worse because it will be 1 fewer tick that those will be able to provide on it, because Observer of Myths is a 1/4 that says every time that you play a minion with more attack than this, give your minions +1 attack. And so all 3 of the worms would proc that. Now only 2 of the worms will proc that, which is also kind of a secondary nerf, even though they're not changing that card.
Yeah. Again, still good.
Yeah. Hunter is definitely still good. I faced a Hunter today. Yeah. They played Bunny Stomper, Awakening Tremors, and then just basically build your own Hydrolodon type of situation. That still felt pretty good. So, this card was always a bit insane.
Yeah. It's been very good for a long time. And I think the only reason they haven't touched it to now is because Hunter was kind of middle of the road for a lot of those metas, and even when they were nerfing things, there were higher priorities that if they'd nerfed this at the same time, it probably would have. I mean, Hunter was not really great for like the last part of the Badlands meta anyway, so if they'd also nerfed this at the time, it probably would have just made it unplayable. So but now it's a 4-set meta. Things that were good in a 5-6 set meta can be broken in a 4-set meta. So, it's appropriate to make a change here. Thrall's Gift is losing Lightning Bolt and getting Lightning Storm.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. Nature Shaman is primarily a sentiment outlier with access to a lot of damage very early in the game. However, it's also expected to get a better matchup spread after the other changes being made in this patch. This change removes some of that burst damage and redundancy in the deck. We think Lightning Storm is another good and flavorful option for Thrall's Gift, weakening this specific deck, but offering options to other Shaman decks that weren't there before, meaning Reno Shaman, basically.
Yeah. Second Lightning Storm. Great.
Yeah.
So that's actually useful for them. Or a Hex, it's a flexible second Lightning Storm, or a Hex if you really need it because they went tall.
Or, hey, look, I have a wide board. Let me Bloodlust you, right? But yeah, I admit I played some of the Nature Shaman because it was pretty effective at dealing with Paladins. How do you kill a Paladin that heals up? You kill them all at once. So, yeah, it was quite good, and there were no misses on Wandmaker. Wandmaker gave you more damage, no matter what. Now there will be one miss. I don't know if this kills the deck, if you're like now just one too few, but I imagine someone will figure something out. I feel like there's always a way to cobble things together. Yeah. If we manage to keep the deck alive without bioluminescence, I feel like there's a strong possibility someone will come up with another build.
I'm fairly confident that if Clark Hellscream is continuing to play Hearthstone, that he will figure out a way to make Nature Shaman the best deck in Hearthstone, according to Clark Hellscream.
There was definitely a clip from an Asian player who did, I think they were on a double discount turn, right? On Nature Spells discounted twice, and had a big enough board that after doing their crashes and everything to clear, they went Conductivity, the Ragnaros spell.
Jive Insect? Oh, good lord.
Yeah. They drew it off the top, so it was in the deck.
Oh, sure. As one does.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if Crash is clearing the way,
yeah. Just and you get 2 minions from the frogs now. So
that's true. Those frogs. Really?
Those frogs are something.
Yeah.
That was one of the reasons that I stopped playing the aggro Demon Hunter, because I kept getting frogged, and then I had to spend my weapon swings into 0/1s, and I was not having that. I think the other thing that's important about losing Lightning Bolt out of the gift is that both it's 2 fewer burn spells that you can put in the deck, and also it's 2 fewer 1-cost nature spells that you can discount with 1 flash to make Crash cheaper.
Well, gift itself is not a nature spell.
Gift is not a nature spell, but the Lightning Bolt is.
Yeah.
It's something.
So there's no 1-mana spell in Lightning Bolt in Thrall's Gift now, right? Because Lightning Storm's 3, Hex is 3, Bloodlust is 5. So you can't just put Thrall's Gift in both by itself and to discount both to get the extra Lightning Bolt for the burn from the Lightning Bolt, as well as an additional discount on the nature spells for a Crash of Lightning spell or a Crash of Thunder specifically.
Yeah, I mean, the whole reason that the deck was able to function with just cobbled together spell damage, right? Novice Zappers and Kobold Geomancers and Thalmos, really just throwing it back, is because you pretty much only need 1 discount to pop off.
Yeah.
Like, if it's turn 5, turn 6, and your nature spells are discounted by 1, everything's free. Like, you would just play the spell damage minions, maybe even play a Wandmaker that turn, right? And pretty much all the things you were doing were going to be free. So, I have no doubt that someone will come up with another version if there are, decks that need to be killed all at once. And we'll just see how it goes. But I like the possibility for like just helping out other Shaman decks by giving them extra Lightning Storm. And I was really tired of seeing that, because one thing the Rainbow DK can't really do is go over its max life total in the mid game. Like, unless you stick Mon Paw. Even
then, that only does so much, right?
Yeah.
You can, there's Mon Paw and the 5 armor for Headless Horseman, and that's it. And
Titan,
there is a clip from my Twitch stream on Friday or Monday of me dying on 5 to a whole library of pop-up books and a children's treasury, if you will. And I was not happy about it at all. So
I had a game a while ago where they double Flash of Lightning on 4, and I'm just like, this is not promising. Like, you don't even really need a second Flash of Lightning. That's just kind of showing off at that point.
Yeah, but if you have the means, I guess it makes lightning reflexes a little bit better. If you get something that's a little bit more expensive, it makes it a little bit easier to get the second draw off it. So
Yeah, if you like want to make a reroll with amphibious elixir or something. But
yeah.
We should get into the other deck that kills you all at once.
So yeah, speaking of killing you all at once, so Warrior got 2 major nerfs. Aftershocks is going from 4 mana to 5 mana, and Odin is going from 8 mana to 9 mana. Dev comment to Warrior is another class that's looking very strong in the early meta, and which is likely to get even stronger after the other changes in this patch. Aftershocks combined with Acolyte of Pain to let Warrior draw 2 quickly through its deck for powerful late game cards. We're making these changes to make that end game a little slower and less consistent. I think these will both help there. I mean, Aftershocks to 5 is a lot. It means that you have to actually set up Acolyte of Pain with a spell just to be able to do that for 7 mana.
No, it's 6. It discounts 2.
3 and 3. So yeah, 6.
So,
and 6 is still a fair amount,
Well, and crucially, it's the turn that you might otherwise play that Fire Clear.
A Trial by Fire.
Oh, Trial by Fire? Do they even run Trial by Fire anymore? I haven't seen one in a while.
Some of them run 1.
Yeah, I've been seeing that in the more just straight Odin.
Yeah. So, and just in general, slowing down the I draw through like 4 cards turn is pretty crucial. So, happy to see that. It's one of those where it's like, this was to Warrior and it also affected the Shaman Aftershocks. Like, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I'm a priest main. I have no empathy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got a bunch of druid cards nerfed.
Yeah.
So, Odin, the thing about Odin is it's still like, it's the same as it's always been. You play it and then you kill them. So now that's just a turn later.
Yeah, you can't hero power on the turn you play it if you get it later, I guess.
Yeah, which is also kind of crucial.
But it also just slows it down, right? It gives you a little bit more time to get under them. They don't want to use as much armor when they don't have Odin active.
Right.
So if they are having to use more armor to stay alive until they can get Odin online, then that's less armor that they have to kill you with. Like if they have to play a Razorfen Rockstar out early in order to just not die, then, that's less armor that they have to kill you with. I would expect that that's still going to be, it might get dropped from the Reno decks, but it's already been getting dropped from the Reno decks because they're all in on tendrils anyway, and they want to use like Talon or caricature artists to draw the Bran and have that be the most expensive minion in the deck.
Yeah.
So I don't even know if that's necessarily going to affect that as much, but certainly like the hyper draw Odin decks will get a little bit slower, and maybe they'll have more card draw concerns if it's taking them longer to do that, or like hand space concerns rather. And
it also
maybe they'll have to use more armor to just not die.
It also is another turn for slower decks to like try and dig to their out, right? Mainly Dirty Rat if you are running it, or in the case of my mage, just assembling a full squad of Sleet Skaters, including one pulled off of Ezadune. Yeah, I just played 4 Sleet Skaters on the Odin the turn that they played it, because it's their only big minion, and gained 32 armor, and then the following turn I reverbed their Quillbore and played another 2 Sleet Skaters. And they didn't have enough armor left in their decks to kill me. So that was exciting.
I had a similar game today, but with Quartzite Crushers.
Yeah.
Where I got both of my Quartzite Crushers vipered and still froze their face every turn after 8. So
that's another thing is, as mage, I can discover the cryopreservation to freeze their face.
Oh yeah.
So it was really I might go back to that deck. Mage is so cool now.
It's cooler than cool. It's ice cold.
Indeed.
That elemental is nuts.
We have one more nerf to cover before we get into the buffs that are one of them spooky.
One of Ziliax's pieces was nerfed. The ticking module, which is the 1/3 that says cost 1 less for each minion in play. It is going from 4 mana to 5 mana. Dev comment: the reception of Ziliax Lux 3000 has been just about perfection. We love all the different variations people are trying, but ticking module is proving to be a bit too efficient. We hope this change will bring this Ziliax more into line with the overall power level and also encourage more continued Ziliax variety. I should mention there was also apparently a poll that Ridiculous Hat was conducting on Twitter about what the plural of Ziliax is. I don't know where he landed, but it ended up being a PowerPoint presentation that he was presenting to the rest of the team. As one does. Just in case you were wondering if Hat is still living his best life, yes, he is. So, yeah, I mean the ticking Ziliax is it was in a lot of these swarm decks, and it was especially because it's all minions and not just your minions. It's something that even if you're not playing a swarm deck, you can pick that anyway and still put that on like the perfect module and generally be able to get it out reasonably early, and this will just slow that down a little bit.
Yeah, I mean it's being used defensively with perfect in the rainbow deck because you've got crop rotation and the Army of the Dead, which are fantastic if it's like, oh, my opponent's got some minions. All right, let me play this and Ziliax because it's free now.
Yeah. And in the Dragon Priest, it definitely felt like it was still pylon ticking as the no question. If
Hunter
you're playing a bunch of minions, it still absolutely makes sense. And one of the best times to have a ticking pylon Ziliax is when your opponent also has a board. And that's when you then can just make a bunch of value trades and then just be like, all right, if you're in the mirror, I've ended up in a surprising number of Zarimi Priest mirrors. And if they get their Ziliax before me, it's just like, oh, well. Yep.
Yeah.
But for people who are just playing, who don't have anything in their own deck to help activate it, I think this will make it less likely that you'll be playing the ticking, which is good. It shouldn't be what everyone is making all of their Ziliax cards.
Yeah.
Sure. Yep. And then, as we said, we got 2 buffs. The dev comment, we usually don't make buffs this early in a meta, but this time we were able to see a couple buff targets even in the very early data. We'll keep an eye on these changes and look out for more opportunities in our next balance window when we'll have more data to inform these types of changes. So Sky Mother Aviana, which is the 5/5 Druid Legendary with Battlecry, shuffle 10 random legendary minions into your deck. They cost 1. That is going from 6 mana to 5 mana. And Frostlich Cross Stitch, which was a 5 mana mage spell that said deal 4 damage to a character if it dies, summon a 3/6 water elemental. And now it is a 4 mana. It is a 4 mana spell that says deal 3 damage to a character if it dies, summon a 3/6 water element. So Frostlich Cross Stitch, first of all, is difficult to say. That was clearly supposed to be, one of the really powerful cards that it's not strictly a spell mage card, but it's clearly something that is a powerful spell that also generates a minion that could help keep afloat a spell mage, and it wasn't doing it. So that seems fine.
Yeah, and now you can run it, and you've got 2 things that are fantastic to use alongside keyboard, right? You go keyboard plus this, or keyboard plus the whatever gives you discover 3 cost minion twice if you have.
Spot the difference.
That's the one. So yeah, I still think that deck is going to be bad until there's real spells in all the slots. And personally, if you're not relying on box,
or until they buff Sunset Volley to 9 to stop this tendril nonsense.
Please, yeah.
Because then you can go Sunset Volley on 9 into Orb on 10, and that'll.
And the people playing tendrils can just do boom buffs instead, which is apparently what No Hands is doing right now.
Yes, yeah. There's so much interesting stuff to do in a Brand Warrior, and people are just like, but tendrils. I'm like, we have to. Do we have to coin flip to win? Is that we're just gonna flip this many coins? And
we got flip to win and spin to win. So I mean that's
so. Eventually, there will be enough 10 cost spells that it will just cease to be anyways, but that's...
But we can accelerate that.
Off
we have
in
the
the future.
technology.
We can do that.
However, Sky Mother Aviana, so it might be fine because there's still aggressive decks that are kind of really good in the meta, right? There's the Zarimi Priest, there's the Demon Hunter, and there's Hunter still. And people like me, they're like, yeah, I can play Paladin now. So maybe that'll be enough to hold Druid in check. But I'm so nervous. Curving Sky Mother Aviana into the big ramp spell is just...
Oh yeah, that is a curve, yeah.
Yeah.
I do not wish to once again see A&R cover artist or like refresh draw a bunch of 1-cost legendaries. I don't want these. So
yeah,
we'll see.
I mean, all the Druid experiments have been very mid up to now.
Good.
Maybe, yes. Like I've seen a few people saying, well, we need to buff Druid. It's like Druid did so many crimes, not only just over the past year, but over the past like 2.5 years. Druid can just like take a seat for a minute. It's fine. Like let's just enjoy this time while we have it, because they will print something stupid and then Druid will be off to the races. Mark my words.
I'm waiting for the Highlander Druid that's just like mind control tech, Nomelia, and Huntress, right? Just taking all the neutral board clears.
Yeah. Just Warcraft Rumble
Warcraft
Druid.
Rumble Druid is a great name
Pretty
for
much.
a deck.
Yeah.
Day 9 is streaming Hearthstone this week for the first time in a very long time. And he was playing Standard a couple days ago, I think. And the first deck he's playing back into Hearthstone with still a 10x multiplier. So even though he's in Bronze, he's running into meta stuff, was Spell Druid, which of all, not only is it like, maybe not the tier 1 deck, but also just executing the combo. So of course he doesn't know what any card is. It was quite impressive to watch him working it out from first principles. He was doing terribly in terms of win rate, but that was not his goal. Very clearly. He just wanted to see how everything worked. And he would like stop and go into MS Paint and diagram it out. What was our maximum damage? And it was surprisingly educational from someone who like doesn't know what any of the cards are in Hearthstone right now, unless, a swipe shows up and then he's like, this is 3 mana? What is this? So and always an entertaining streamer to watch.
Yeah, I mean, he's been playing strategy games at a high level for so long that he can just
pick it up,
do that sort of
just
thing.
Figure it out on the fly. Oh, I see how this works, and then going back and really looking at his play to really make sure. He was talking about when you're not in the game, taking a second to think back. You have time, what was the optimal play, and then that changes your heuristics. That changes what plays are loud or quiet for you in the moment when you have 70 seconds to make a decision, and teaches you like, oh, hey, you can actually use the file before you play Alonius sometimes to get the maximum discount. That'll actually get you an extra mana that you need for a Living Roots. Maybe that's not the deck that you're playing, but the same type of way of learning applies. So that's like the one person who I've seen playing Spell Druid, but it doesn't necessarily mean that Druid won't rise from the ashes with some sort of crazy something at some point, because it's Druid. That's what it does.
Yes. So we also had a couple of significant bug fixes in this patch. The event quest bug where the destroy part of player destroy Geppetto Joymancer was not progressing the quest is fixed. So now you don't have to play your own Geppetto. You could destroy someone else's Geppetto. You have to find someone else playing a Geppetto. That may be a challenge, but you at least don't have to have the card yourself in order to advance that quest anymore. They fixed the King Crush hero portrait buff bug that we talked about last week with Warsong Wrangler and Wild. That is now fixed. So your King Crush will no longer get +2/+1 when you discover a King Crush with Warsong Wrangler. They fixed a bug where Shutter Block, I believe the minion, couldn't deal damage to the enemy hero if it was played and then its effect was not consumed. So apparently the can't damage heroes this turn, or can't damage heroes, period, Well, yeah, it's not this turn. It's just can't damage heroes. Not only applied to the battle cry that it was buffing, but also to the body. So that is fixed. I saw someone in the Discord just today asking about that. So that is a thing that can come up, I guess. And apparently there were different versions of Air Elemental in Core and Journey to Ungoro. Air Elemental was a 1 mana 2/1, I believe elusive. And then it got buffed to 3 attack in Core, and now the Journey to Ungoro version will also be buffed. So, which, if you put that into your deck, I think you puts the Core version in by default, but weird things happen. So that's it for the patch notes. We also had some more news about bot bans, and boy, howdy did we have some news about bot bans. So, I will read the forum post first, and then I think it's only appropriate to go to Celestalon's tweet that had a lot more gusto behind it, I would say. But this month has been a busy month in our battle against the bots. Since our last update just 3 weeks ago, we've ratcheted up our bot detection and banned over 585,000 more bots, including 500,000 bots throughout this week. We hope they're shaking in their circuits. And then Celestalon had posted a tweet saying, earlier this week on Tuesday, we launched the largest at that time ban wave in Hearthstone history. Then again on Wednesday, we launched the largest at the time ban wave in Hearthstone history. Then again today, we launched the largest ban wave in Hearthstone history. In total, over 500,000 bots died this week. It's an ongoing fight, but we're going to keep beating them back. So hopefully that will make a dent. I know that they had a big ban wave. I guess it was 3 weeks ago, but certainly the bigger one was before that. And then the bot makers have recovered. So this will probably be nearly a setback, unfortunately, but at least it'll give us a little bit of reprieve from having to play against bots in Constructed.
And it really does help, apparently, to report the bot. So, if you face a bot, click on them in your recent opponents, say report for, you click on for cheating and then for botting. They keep saying that does help. So keep fighting the good fight on that.
Yeah, they can't find the bots that are behaving differently than they expect if people don't tell them about it.
I ran into someone who, after our game, added me and just said reported and then unfriended. And I'm like, reported for what? What am I reported for? I need to know. I was playing Blood DK. Is that a reportable offense? I don't know.
Maybe. For some people, I'm sure it is.
I guess.
Were you playing all basic cards in your deck?
No. I don't think I did anything that seemed like a bot.
And I'm sure that they are looking at the actual behavior of the account. But yes, please don't report people just because they are annoying, even if they're playing Blood DK.
I wouldn't even do that to an Excavate Rogue. Often. But that is it for news. But we also have some actual tournament news to discuss. So let's talk about that.
It's the grand tournament!
So we had another Battle of the Discords, which took place on March 23rd and 24th, and it was live streamed with casting. The tournament was a best-of-5 conquest format with 1 day of Swiss, followed by top 16, and then prize packs and or pre-orders for the top 4. So the winner was nobody, which makes me think of Odysseus in the Odyssey, right, where he goes in and tricks the Cyclops by saying his name is nobody. But anyway, from THL with a lineup of Excavate Paladin, Odin Warrior, Wheellock, and Excavate Mage. Checks out. Seems good. Although, Excavate Mage, interesting. MMW, also from THL, took second place. And then we had 4 representatives from Concede in the top 16. So congrats to Zombie, Yum, and Panacea for making top 16, and Catharsis for placing in the top 4. So thank you to everyone from Concede who participated. Always fun to kind of get represented at events like these. So, in the top 16, the main decks were obviously like hand buff paladin, Odin warrior, the beast or zoo hunter, and then followed by shopper, DH, wheel lock, and nature shaman. And then Concede's Yum had a unique lineup with Highlander hunter, Highlander priest, elemental shaman, and handlock. So that's pretty sweet. I guess, do you want to touch on a brief highlight here?
Yeah, so with the Highlander hunter, there was a game from day one where Yum was facing a overheal priest who was doing very well, had a Hedonus up, although hadn't quite managed to OTK with it, had the injured haulers, had not one, but two Amonthuls out pretty early on. And Yum had played a Hodier, just main decked 4/8 mana, played a Hodier. But it worked out.
Sure.
It worked out for them.
Yeah.
They had a King Crush from Hodier. It did work that way. Completely got rid of everything. Greatest King Crush. And then the priest managed to recover, get a Phi that they had gotten from the Amonthul up for a little bit of healing. But there were still two Hodier ticks left, which the casters actually had forgotten that there were still two Hodier ticks. So they're like, we don't have lethal. How do we do this? But was able to get an 8/8 rushing beast, and then the 8/8 King Crush and something else also being 8/8 that then was able to seal the victory. So I haven't seen enough King. I keep saying King Crush. It was King Plush, of course. I haven't seen enough King Plushes being played, so I appreciated.
Well, they could have. I mean, it's Highlander. They could have played Hemet to get a King Crush.
That's true.
I
So
suppose,
it could have been. I don't know actually if Hemet was being played in that list, but it was satisfying to see the King Plush animation and see that go face.
Well, then there is one other event that is taking place this weekend, so will have just happened if you're listening to this probably, or maybe you can catch the end, which is the Solary Grand Prix. So invitational tournament, €2,000 prize pool. Streamed this Saturday and Sunday, which is going to be March 30th and 31st at twitch.tv/SolaryHS. Players are... Is it open and then these guests, or is it just these guests?
I think it's just that. I'm not sure, actually. I know there were qualifiers as well for it, so this might just be... These might just be the invitees, and then there might be like an open component as well. I'm not sure, actually.
Well, we'll have to double check that. But
looks like both, says Donkey.
At the very least, these guests will be there. Some highlight players. They usually have a combination of people who qualify and then more known players that just make it. So we've got Tars, Baby Bear, Odinian, Otsuna, Gaboom, Tic Tac, Pocket Train, and Dizdemon. So pretty stacked lineup there. Always happy to see Baby Bear getting the invite, and should be a ton of fun. I don't know if there will be an English broadcast as well as a French. Sometimes there is. I feel like sometimes not, but it is hilarious either way. I occasionally have like random things in between matches and stuff. So
I'm not sure if they do that for the Grand Prix or not.
No?
I know they do those for those. I think they do those for like the full invitationals, but I'm not sure they do those for the Grand Prix.
Well, regardless, it's one of the few third-party orgs that's really kept things running, and so always nice to see the events they run. But that's going to do it for tournaments. So let's get into talking about our deck for Decksplanations this week, which is Rainbow Decay, and a version that is fitting for who we are.
All right, so we are talking about Rainbow Decay, and we are talking about the slower, more controlling defensive Rainbow Decay. That is similar to the BBU deck that we had talked about earlier, but this is Rainbow so that it can finish with CNE. We're basing this originally off the No Hands list. We have all these lists in the show notes. There have been some changes that are also sort of looking ahead at the nerfs. So in terms of core cards that are being run in all of them, we have the Runes of Darkness, Threads of Despair, which has now gone up to 2 from 1. Frost Strike, Hematurge, Mining Casualties, Acolyte of Death in most of them, not all of them. Crop Rotation, Sickly Grimewalker is an insane card. Helia, Monpa, Army of the Dead, Headless Horseman, Primus, Sieni, Reska, Ziliax. And then people have been running various other things. Miracle Salesman, there's a version that has Chill Fallen Baron instead of that. Dirty Rat, Rustrot Viper, although that's been coming out of lists with less paladins. And No Hands had an ETC in it that, like the VS list and a list from Chenko, I believe, that Wicked found that had hit 94 legend in Asia, that had taken out also the ETC and taken out the Salesman and even the Acolyte of Death and added Chill Fallen Baron, Gold Panner, a Paint Fin, and Crusher. Both VS and this Chenko list have added Quartzite Crusher, which from hearing you guys talk about this deck, and especially if you're seeing a lot of Demon Hunters, Quartzite Crusher, good card.
It's a busted card. It's the reason you're playing the deck, basically.
Yeah, it basically was like every time you play Runes of Darkness, you're looking for Quartzite Crusher, pretty much.
Yeah, unless you're specifically on a plague game plan, you're looking for the plague weapon. But almost always, if you're not doing that, you're looking for Quartzite Crusher, and it's like an instant pick, like 90% of the time.
I mean, it's the kind of not only but main way that you heal in this deck. Like, despite being a more controlling strategy, there's not a ton of heal, right? Like, Monpaw has to stick. The Primus even can be situational in terms of having a good target. Headless Horseman is just the 5 armor when you play it. So unless you are, like, discovering Death Strike from Hematurge, or, I guess you've got Ziliax, or Plagues from Helia, like it's not actually big on healing, except Quartzite Crusher. And Quartzite Crusher is even more healing in the matchups where it's relevant that you freeze the opponent's face. So with the slew of Demon Hunters that are all over the place now, it's very timely. It's not like, guaranteed gonna get you. Sometimes they still coin out the grasp. But yeah, Quartzite Crusher is so good right now that I think this Asia player was just like, hey, what if we just ran 2 of these? Because, we have all the runes.
Yeah, and you're 50, it's like a 50-50 to get offered it from Runes of Darkness, because there are only 6 weapons in Death Knight right now. So stuff, the Primus, Arcanite Ripper, Soulbreaker, Might of Menethil, Quartzite Crusher, and Frostmourne. So, like, there are times that you will get offered, like, it's usually like Quartzite Crusher 1, Staff of the Primus 2, and then sigh and take one of the other ones, which are still fine. I mean, Frostmourne's generally a little bit too expensive, but
it's 20 damage.
But I mean, Might of Menethil is situationally useful. Like, I've gotten some pretty good value out of Might of Menethil. That's also a corpse spender for purposes of juicing CNE, because, like, ultimately what you're doing is you're trying to keep your opponent's board under control and hit them in the face with your weapons as much as you can, and then ship them down with your weapon swings and your token minions that stick around from, like, Army of the Dead or, like, the Mining Casualties guys or whatever, just like random hero powers, or if you're lucky enough to get Headless Horseman early, you could start, pinging them in the face for 3 every turn. And then you want to juice up CNE so that CNE can end, because you get a decent amount of chip damage, but it's usually not enough to just finish unless you have a really big board stick, like you steal something big with a Reska and you're able to play something else. That's doesn't happen all that often, but CNE you can usually get up to like 10-15 damage and then just use that to get yourself over the line. But you do have to be somewhat deliberate about spending corpses in this deck, because you don't have things like Corpse Bride, right? Where you can just, or the 3-mana spell that spends all your corpses and summons a minion, right? Like, you have Army of the Dead as your big spender. The Runes of Darkness will spend, Hematurge spends. There's a couple of other spenders that you can generate, but you need to be deliberate about doing that, because there are a lot of times when I'm looking at CNE in my hand and I have 10 mana, and it's like, deal 6 damage and summon, I don't know what the base number of minions is because I don't pay attention to. Like the minions almost never matter because they're dying. But there are times when you have to actually just make a big board with it. But it's just like, like a base number of minions with like pathetic stats and like 6 damage. And it's like, oh, that's disappointing, but it's easy enough to set up.
I was doing a coaching in it and with someone who had honestly been playing it more than me, so it was really a co-op. And I hope that I think that they learned some things through talking it through with me, and I certainly learned some things through playing it with them. And they were saying they had been using the CNE sometimes just for a board if they were pretty sure their opponent wouldn't be able to clear it. And it also is lifesteal, which
Yeah.
I sort of forgot because mostly I just got killed by it. But it is lifesteal, so like Denathrius of old, usually you're using it to kill them, but it can also deal some damage, heal you up, and give a big minion, or in this case, board of not nearly as big minions necessarily, for them to deal with. So Maw and Paw sticking really does help also on that front, because if it sticks around, it's spending corpses. So
yeah, it's kind of a win-win, right? Because either it sticks around and you just gain 5 life and spend 5 corpses, or it dies and you just got 5 corpses that you can use to spend, right? So it's generally playing it on 4 unless you're already like so far behind that it's not a good idea, and you'll know those situations. Like just jamming Maw and Paw, even if it dies, it's soaking 8 damage if it's not getting hard removed, right? Like that's a lot of health on that minion. And sometimes just soaking the 8 damage, even if it's just putting it out there literally to die right away, is effectively healing you for 8 and giving you 5 corpses, which is worth 4 mana to do, right? So, Maw and Paw is one of the better early plays in the deck. I don't know that you necessarily keep it in the mulligan all the time. I think on the coin, you'd consider it a lot. But it's certainly something you should be thinking about playing on 4, even if you think it's going to die right away. Like if they have to trade a couple things into it, fine, good. If it trades off a couple minions in the process of dying to save you 8 damage, like great. Like that's a removal spell. That's fine.
absolutely. And sometimes just getting something like mining casualties out on 2 is useful, to have corpses, but also then if you play mining casualties on 2 and then you have Grimewalker, or if you're playing an Acolyte of Death on 3, then you have a couple of undead right away. Whereas, so that you're not waiting, either hoping it sticks or like waiting till turn 6 to play it with the crop rotation, or turn 5 with your hero power. I did manage to discover a Horn of Winter this morning when I was playing the deck a bit, and
oh, that's great. That's always
so be
fun
able
when
to
you
get
get those.
that combo with the Grimewalker and the crop rotation on 4, which my poor opponent was not expecting at all. They were very upset, I think.
Yeah. This is kind of abusing the fact that as we often do in 4-set metas, this is kind of abusing the fact that the discover pools are small, because like Frost Strike will also often get you a Quartzite Crusher if you want it, and so will Hematurge. Those are 2 cards that are both in the deck as well, and they have relatively small pools for Blood and Frost, and Quartzite Crusher shows up in both of those. So that's something that you can also abuse there. And a lot of our removal in the deck is minion based, right? So you're using either your hero power or the degenerated token minions with Sickly Grimewalker to get poison. You can clear a lot of board with that. And also Threads of Despair is a stupid card. And I mean, it's stupid, and that is a compliment. It's stupid in the best way, because it's not Defile, and you have to be it takes a little bit of trial and error. And there were definitely some streams where Edel was gently correcting me in chat about my Threads usage, because I either wasn't seeing that there was a Threads clear, or I was using it extremely poorly. But it's the kind of card where it's like Defile, where the clears, it feels like when you have it in your hand, you're saying to yourself a lot, there has to be a Threads clear here somewhere. It's just a matter of whether you're going to spot it or not. Because it's weird, because you're using at least one of the minions' attacks usually to also contribute some of the damage, but you need each one of the minions that has the threads on it to die. Because Threads of Despair says give all minions, which is on both sides of the board, deal one damage to all minions. So you're effectively looking to try to set off a chain reaction where one's killing another, killing another, killing another. But if they don't all die in succession, or if there aren't enough minions on board, you may not kill the biggest thing. But you can also use one of the minions that's already on board to trade into that biggest thing to bring its health down to be able to die the rest of it. 2 threads makes this a lot easier, but it's also using up 2 copies of threads. But it's just like, that's something that it's kind of hard to explain what the math looks like on that in an audio format. You'd almost need like a couple of like math examples, like spot the lethal type things, like the old Dr. Boom puzzle labs to see if we can clear with Threads of Despair. But just the shortcut is that you want as many minions on board -1, and you want that number to be higher than the health of the biggest thing on board, assuming that everything can die, which doesn't always happen. But
so one thing that makes it different
it
from Defile, right? If in Defile it just matters that it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, but here if you have, say it's a hunter, they've got 3 1/1s and a 4/4, and you could make a little make a hero power, drop Threads of Despair on it, send it into the 4/4. Your hero power will die. That'll kill the 3 1/1s, and then each of those does an extra 1, so it will kill the 4/4. Because then that's the remaining 3 health. And this is a place where we need like Day 9's MS Paint whiteboard to map out, did we have a threads clear? But that's the kind of thing, during your opponent's turn and stuff like that, you're trying to think about. You can often put it on a hero power. When in doubt, put it on your own crop rotation, and then you're just set. Although crop rotation is something you may want to save, actually, now that I say that, because it's really good with Acolyte of Death. It's really good with Grime.
Depends.
It varies, right? Like, you can use crop rotation with threads. You can use crop rotation with the poisonous dude. You can use threads with hero power and the poisonous dudes, and that's a guaranteed clear, right? Because if something has a keyword, its death rattle dealing the 1 damage is considered the minion dealing that damage. So poisonous means that minion will clear everything. One of these lists has a single copy of Paint Fin. Probably won't come up too often, but every once in a while, if that sticks around, your opponent has a big board, you can be like, lol, threads, trade off the Paint Fin, and everything dies. Rather similarly, it'll work for lifesteal. You can do that with Ziliax, right? If you need Ziliax to beat down a bigger minion that's in play, and you use the threads, and there's still minions when the Ziliax dies, then its 1 damage will get lifesteal. Yeah. So that can be pretty relevant.
You get to
sometimes.
turn Ziliax into Samuro Apotheosis, which,
not exactly, right? It's just the 1 damage from its death rattle.
Yeah.
But
that's still, if there's a wide board, that's a lot, right? Especially if you have a wide board too, because you can also play like an Army of the Dead or a crop rotation into that to juice that up as well. So there's things that you can do there. And sometimes like crop rotation just to take out a 4 health minion that needs to die is fine.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like that's perfectly okay. Like you don't always have to swing for the fences. You can just sometimes use crop rotation as I'm just going to clear this 4 health minion or this 3/2 and this 2/2 or whatever it happens to be. Like against Paladin, that would be a common pattern because you just don't want to especially when it was 3 attack deputization, or you just didn't want to let them have anything on board. So it would be fine to just crop rotation to just clear off a couple of minions. And again, you're still getting corpses from it. That's where you have to be a little bit careful in terms of that versus Army of the Dead, because Army of the Dead spends corpses and doesn't give them back to you when the zombies die, because those are risen. So the Army of the Dead doesn't give you corpses back, but crop rotation does. Crop rotation is also generate 4 corpses, which you may need to be able to do an Army of the Dead, or to be able to give a +1/+1 to a weapon, or even just to be able to, use a hematurge or whatever, right? Like there are things that sometimes you just need to generate the corpses, and it's okay to use that. But that's just part of, understanding, like playing with the deck and knowing when that's wasteful and when that's actually
you're
correct.
probably never or almost never, I don't want to say never on pretty much anything, but like playing it out just for the corpses, that's more of like the Rainbow DK that's like all in on CME.
No, yeah.
Right. You're not playing it just for the corpses, but because we don't have healing, we don't want to take tons and tons of chip damage. So if you leave something up for a few turns and you would take a bunch of damage from that, you might as well just use one of your crop rotations to make sure that you're not taking especially like multiple turns of minion damage from your opponent. And you do have, another thing I would say on this deck, you want to really try to figure out what's my opponent doing as early as possible. Sometimes it's obvious because it's the only, if it's a Demon Hunter, we know what they're doing unless they're like the two people in our Discord who've been playing Highlander Demon Hunter. But
that's getting more popular now. I think it's the Highlander Demon Hunter is actually, I think, starting to become the more pop. I have to look at the stats.
Highlander.
But it turns out,
yeah,
it turns out. I mean, they're running 2 copies of Umpire's Grasp and 2 copies of Window Shopper. But it turns out when those are the only cards that you care about in the deck, then everything else can just be singletons, and then you may as well run the Reno cards.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And like Kurtrus, quite good. Reno, quite good. Like Reno is an aggressive card. If you have a board and your opponent's trying to have a defensive board, you
that
just plow right through.
Good point.
So, yeah.
But either way, if it's a Demon Hunter, then you kind of know what they're doing with the Umpire's Grasp and the Window Shopper. But you can definitely want to plan ahead with your discovers. If you're facing something where you're going to need bigger clears, you want to know that when you play Hematurge, so that maybe you do need to take a Soul Stealer or something like that. If you're facing a Warlock, you will probably want the Plague Weapon off of the Runes of Darkness, because then if they wheel, then you can shuffle even more plagues in. If you know that they're Reno and you get the Plague Weapon and Helia, then all their Reno cards are just turned off. Like if you can get that off before they Bran, like they're a Tendril Warrior.
Yeah.
In our coaching, we did have this happen where we managed before their Bran to turn it off with a Helia and a Discovered down with the ship. And then they were just kind of done. They played it out, but it turns out you do need your battle cries to go off twice in a Tendril Warrior deck.
Yep.
Yeah. There was one delightful game where I played against, this was a version that I was running the Dirty Rats, and they play, I posted this clip on Twitter also, where they played Talon on 5. And I thought about it for a second, and I just said, oh, and then I killed the Talon and immediately Dirty Ratted it, and then just killed the brand that came out, and then they decided they didn't want to play that game anymore. And also, like, Down with the Ship is a card you can get off of the Frost Strike as well. That's Frost Unholy, so you can get Down with the Ship off of that. I forget about I think the Death Rattle one is just Unholy now, right? I forget, like, they changed the runes on those things so much that I forget what the runes are on the 3/2. But I'm pretty sure that's just Unholy now.
The Plague 3/2? I think so. Yeah, it can be hard to keep track of all of the runes, but you can get Horn of Winter. You can get a number of good things off of the Frost Strike, and that's one of your ways to deal with an early minion. So that's your like best way to deal with the Warrior Totem or a Gold Panner or something like that, which can be very frustrating. And you do have a couple of hero powers, but it's nice to just be able to snipe that thing before they gain a ton of armor.
Yeah. Frost Strike is really good for like those annoying early minions. It's very good. It's been very good in that deck, and it's kind of one of the reasons that it's a little bit better to go Rainbow as opposed to just Blood, Unholy, because having even just access to like Frost Strike and then Reska's Frost too, I believe, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So having access to those two things is gives it a little bit of a leg up over the Blood Unholy build as well, and obviously CNE also.
Yeah, like the things that the Blood Unholy deck got are basically Corpse Explosion and Soul Stealer, which can be very powerful if the main thing you need to do is clear boards. But yeah, something I've found playing it against the rainbow decks is a lot of it is really just about courtside crushers. Like, if one of you courtside crushers the other one, well, then they don't get to use their courtside crusher. And as Blood Unholy, I just had to discover them, right? So, yeah, there's just kind of limited healing. It's like we have Death Strike, but it's not quite the meta for Death Strike. I don't know like what it is exactly. It's weird. Like, we still have Hollow Hound, we still have No Muncher, we still have Death Strike. Like, there are healing cards.
They're slow though.
Yeah. And like Threads is really the only early clear. It's a heck of a clear, but there are games where if you don't have Threads against Hunter, you're just dead.
Yeah. Or like Mining Casualties, your opponent leaves them alone, and then you can play like Sickly Grimewalker to turn the zombies or the ghouls that come out into poison. But yeah, that's the one way you lose with this deck is if you just get rushed down. Like sometimes you'll just have like a Demon Hunter will just go like coin grasp into a 6/5 that you just can't handle. Or there was one game I ended up playing against a Mech Rogue, and I was sitting there. They played a Mimiron on 3, and I was sitting there with just a crop rotation in my hand, which wasn't enough. And then they just stealthed it and put all the mini bots on it, and that was the end of it. And I never recovered from it. Right. So like if you can go very fast, you can kind of get ahead of this deck, and that's one of the ways that you can lose. And if you're playing against a deck that you think can just get the jump on you like that, then you do need to have a plan for like, how do I keep that from happening? Sometimes you can't, right? But sometimes that affects your mulligan. If there's like specific things that you need to be looking for, like some sort of like Mining Casualties and Grimewalker specifically, or maybe you need a Frost Strike to not let something start spiraling out of control so you can kill it. Like that.
And you want to be mindful, as always in decks, but of the coin with that kind of thing too. If your earliest clear that's in your hand is an Army of the Dead on 5, like try to make sure that you have the corpses and you have the coin for that if you're facing a hunter or something like that. Like, thinking ahead to when is my earliest way to deal with what they have, and can I make sure that I can actually use it and be ready for it when that happens, if you're not just dead or ahead of time. But
yeah. And I mean, the other way you can lose is just by using your answers inefficiently, right? Like a lot of our clears are combos. Like Threads needs some help to get going, especially if you've played Headless Horseman already. Then you don't have a hero power that generates a minion. So then you need to rely on the opponent's board a little bit more, or something like crop rotation. So that becomes a combo. Like Sickly Grimewalker needs something else to get going. There like sometimes there's like a board that's tall in like got a couple of tall minions and you just got a Primus left. There's also, by the way, don't underestimate playing Primus for taunts. Like it is very good to remove a big minion, but and that's one of your other big heals. But also like there are some decks, and Demon Hunter's probably one of them, where just playing the Reborn taunts is a brick wall that is very hard for them to get through.
Yeah.
So like against like a warrior, like an Odin warrior, they still have sanitize, but it's still like it takes
the
multiple
Raimi
things to get through
hates
them.
to see that. Like if
So
I don't have an Amonthal specifically, I'm just like, oh,
God. Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing with Primus, if it sticks, is remember that the one option that you don't use because it's already dead by the time you try to do it is give your next spell +3 damage and cost 3 less, which one of the spells that you have that does damage is CNE. So that's just 3 extra damage on your CNE that you can use to find a lethal that you wouldn't have had otherwise if it doesn't stick. You're almost never doing that with the first press of Primus, but the Primus does live sometimes. So if you do that and you have a CNE in hand, just remember that you can use that to both get a cheaper CNE and juice the damage on it, which is also lifesteal, so that could be some healing, some burst healing that's relevant.
And this really is a control deck in a sense, so you're really, there's a reason why Lucade suggested this deck, besides the fact that also that he knew Edel had been playing it and I had played it a little bit. But you are doing a lot of, what does my opponent have? What answers am I going to need for their big swing turns? Can I say for that? It is a little different from something like a priest or a warrior in that you do have to also worry a little bit more about chip damage than you might in like older versions of priest, where you're just like, oh, just heal up, because you don't have endless healing. But you are having to think ahead about being most efficient with the clears.
Well, the flip side of that is you can kill your opponent, right? Which is something that a lot of control decks have not really had the ability to do without just generating nonsense. Like, you have the ability to kill your opponent, and there is a point in the game where you need to start thinking that way, right? Like, there is face damage that you can get. Like, there are times when you don't need to trade off everything, right? Like, there are some decks like Paladin where you're probably going to want to, but against like a Demon Hunter, if they have, I don't know, like a 1/1 demon that they used for a battle cry that's left over, like a 1/1 Magtheridon, they can have that. It's fine, right? Like, that's not going to do that much damage. I mean, if it lives for a long time, it might, but like, you'll eventually get a rusher that can deal with that. But just try to send the damage face, because you do need to end at some point. And like, the longer, even though your control decks can go long, you're not a fatigue deck. You're not going to run them out of everything. So you do want to be looking towards, how do I clear things efficiently, but also look towards ending the game with a weapon, with continued weapon damage, and like a big CNE at the end of it.
How much damage is it costing me to deal with this, and how much, versus how much damage would I take if I don't?
Yeah.
And also, if I don't deal with it now, if it's like a 1/1, then like, who cares ever? If it's a little bit bigger, I'll have a nice Grime Walker clear next turn, so I'm gonna ignore it now, or something like that. And right now I can send some damage face. The person who I was coaching with this was saying that he liked this deck because he felt like he had things that he was doing with his mana and was being proactive. And he said he's not usually a control person, but this is a deck that, while it does have a more defensive style, is trying to win the game and not just sit there and laugh evilly while it gets rid of all of your cards.
I mean, you can still do that if you want to.
That's
Nobody's
true.
stopping you.
No one can tell whether you're doing that.
I will say that the Reska oops emote, oh bless your heart, is delightful, and it's worth finding times to use that. I'm just gonna say that.
Oh, I'm using the new skin all the time. It's my favorite DK skin right now.
It's there's already quite a few very nice DK skins, but the new one is super cute.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
so do we need to talk about matchups at all? Or I know we talked about some of them, but
yeah, I mean, I think we can just quickly, right? Demon Hunter, we talked about. You freeze their face.
Yeah, just freeze their face forever.
That's your main thing. If not, do your best to remove everything and get Crusher online when you can.
Yeah.
Look for any healing you can. Make sure you stay out of range, but you can get there just by if they can't use their face, that's half their damage. Like,
yeah. The one thing to keep in mind with the freeze their face forever plan is that they will typically get one turn with Reno, where they do get to hit you in the face, and you need to have a plan to be able to heal back up after that. Like, it could be CNE, it could be, it could be a combination of the weapon or like Primus or something. I don't know what you need to have a plan for. After they Reno, you're gonna have one spot on the board, and you're gonna need to heal up because they did get to hit you in the face. Also in the mirror, which also becomes a freeze their face forever plan, because you both have Quartzite Crushers and it gets very hard to kill your opponent if they're constantly hitting you in the face and healing. Headless Horseman, both playing the Headless Horseman and when you draw the head will both unfreeze you.
Which I'm not sure if that's supposed to be happening on the drawing the head, but
I think because it transforms the hero power, it treats it like transforming the hero.
I guess.
It does. Whether it's going to continue to or not is, as of, March 20 whatevereth 2024, it does unfreeze you. So like there's an option if you've already played Headless Horseman to just like turbo draw and look for the head.
Yeah.
And then if you're the one who's freezing them, then you can kind of get yourself back in that game.
Yeah. Don't sleep on Northern Exposure or something?
Northern Navigation?
Northern Navigation. Since that discovers a spell from your deck, higher odds that what you'll see is going to be the head. But against Hunter, this is one of the ones that can just get you, right? So, keep early clears, threads, absolutely a keep, and crop rotation as well. You're just like, do your best to survive, and then any healing you can get going is very important. Definitely one where like you maw and paw and they have to clear it, and so even if you don't gain life, you're gaining 8 from them clearing it. Paladin, again, you're just trying to remove all their stuff, and it's a lot easier to survive this one now that they can't win Fury Charge, kill you. And
they have a lot of stuff, but you can remove all of it. Like I've won more than a few games against Paladins by just running them out of stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes it took a little bit of luck, but to get a good clear into them overextending, but they sometimes do have to overextend just to have the damage, and that'll probably happen even more now that they don't have the Wind Fury from hand.
Yeah. So
you can run them out of stuff, and it's a little bit easier when you're running Viper to keep things under control, but even without Viper, you can still just kind of deal with their things.
Yeah. And then Warrior, like Demon Hunter, again, make sure you don't get killed on the Reno on freeze turn, but otherwise freeze them every turn you can. Warlock, I think, has the most interesting discover options. You're trying to get any extra plagues you can, because if they play wheel, they will take them immediately. Definitely want Helia. I've determined that you can play Helia even knowing that they're going to wheel away the plagues from her.
You want to. You can play that on turn, but like you want any plagues that you're shuffling in after to recycle.
Right.
So you want to get that down at ASAP, even if they're going to blow them up, it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, there's an argument that like if you haven't had luck discovering additional ways of shuffling in plagues, then you kind of miss out. But for sure, look for all the plagues things you can, because once they blow up their deck, you're going to take them immediately.
And you also may not have the mana to play a Helia on that turn, because you may also have to deal with a 15-15 or multiple 15-15.
Right, exactly. The Both of You Draw spell is also great there. So if you can discover that one off Frost Strike, I forget what it's called. Frozen Over, I think, where you
Frozen Over. Yeah, both players draw 2 cards. Your opponent can't play them next turn, I think. Yeah.
So you can do that to just fatigue them quicker.
And this is one where you're thinking ahead to, they're probably going to have a couple really big taunts in the mid game, even fairly early. So thinking when they drop the wheel, if they haven't already put down a 15-15, they're probably going to have it now. So you'll want a Primus or a Grimewalker or something you discovered from a Hematurge, or Reska is great.
You can get extra Reskas. Extra Reskas are delightful.
Yep.
So you can look for that from Frost Strike also. That's something that you can sometimes get 2 or 3 Reskas, and that's fine.
Yeah. It's not like all discovers, but it's got sort of a fun number between Frost Strike and Hematurge and
it's like good
Primus,
for Mage, really, when you start thinking about it. Like
I guess. Yeah, and so it feels like pretty different games every time, because of what weapons you get offered from Runes of Darkness, what things you discover, etc. And the pool is small enough right now that those things are still pretty good. It kind of feel like Rainbow is the DK to do right now, just because there aren't big enough incentives for doing anything else. But it also is so hard to build because of how many options there are, just with the reduction in runes on so many things. So yeah, it's a great deck. I'm going to keep experimenting with all kinds of rune combinations because I'm me. and Death Knight is just like the deck builder's class for me.
Yeah, and until some shiny priest deck comes along that isn't a glass cannon, that'll be. I mean, I'll probably play this through the weekend just because like I'm close enough to 11x ranks that I don't want to start messing with something new right now. But then, April Fool's Day seems like a good day to try stupid things. So,
You're reminding me that I need to go back post-patch and see if my Raza deck is going to work.
You let me know how that happens. I will be happy to risk your MMR with that.
Same on that. When Outlaw Torn and Text Muhammad like kept sending me priest things and like adding me in the Discord, and I was just sending as many gifts of like, you will not tempt me, not today, as I could find.
I'm fairly sure I sent at least one "Not Today, Satan" gif in the Discord.
And you are the one who kept strong, and I am not. But I have enjoyed my time with the Dragon Priest. Although, I honestly this month for a new expansion month, I didn't bleed as many ranks as I usually do, trying all kinds of random stuff. So I'm definitely lower than I came in right before the expansion, but I am happy. I was not expecting to get 11x on an expansion month, especially a rotation expansion month. Even if I found a deck that was like the deck that I was doing really well with, which was sort of Handbuff Paladin for me, I just know myself I'm not going to jam enough games of it to hit 11x because I'm going to keep trying other stuff.
There's nothing wrong with that.
All right. I think that'll do it.
We have many folks we'd like to thank. Check out our thanks section on the website at concede.com, where you can also find our contact info, our show notes, and our Patreon information. You can monetarily support our show at patreon.com/coinconcede. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at twitch.coinconcede.com. Join our community chats in our Discord at discord.coinconcede.com. Write into our email at coinconcede@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at coinconcede, as well as like, share, and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/coinconcede. If you'd like some CC swag, head on over to our shop at shop.coinconcede.com. Big thanks to our producers, Number Theory, Kresh, Beef Squatch, David P., Walu, Jeremy T., Bottlecaps, Grumpy Monk, The Burger Club, Kirk Regan, Forgiven One, Grizzly Bear, The Grand Arcanum, and Tyler Knife. I don't know how on earth Hat did all this stuff so fast. I just,
because that's just his normal speaking tempo.
The opening of the show, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. That's a tongue twister. and similarly, just trying to go through this ending with any kind of brevity is a challenge. But yeah, so point to the Hat, because my goodness, I have to edit myself into not screwing up most weeks. Concede to Walu for a match. We faced each other on ladder, and I felt bad. It said, guess we'll call this an extended coin concede. It was a mislethal, and I had the counter lethal. So,
no.
Sorry. But good sport. And then coin concede as well to a couple of my coachings this week for being flexible. Because I was initially going to do a coaching Tuesday night, so it was for Tito. And so I said, I guess I'll coin concede Tito directly. And I was like, I have to go to urgent care. I can't breathe. We're going to have to do this later. And then I had, was that Monday or Tuesday? Oh, that might have been Monday, actually. Yeah. And then I had a cancellation Wednesday, so we were able to get it in then. So, yeah. Really appreciate people being cool about those, because I'm always late on scheduling, and then sometimes stuff happens. So,
well, I will coin concede to both Superior David and That's Admirable, who have both started streaming Hearthstone again this week. I think Admirable's been doing it fairly consistently. I was helping him with getting his stream back set up last week, and he's been back at it now that Bobby Kotick is gone. So that's. That which is a fair enough reason to come back. And David swore that it was a one-shot thing, but he's he did fire up the stream again. So it's good to see it's good to see people coming back. Even if it's just for a day. I think I also saw Brickworm posting that she might stream again soon. Which would be, yeah. It hasn't happened yet, but I'm trying to speak it into the universe, so that would be fun as well. But it's cool to see folks coming back. It's nice to bring back old friends. And also, I forget the name. I forget what the name of the company is. Glitch Gear, Glitch Apparel. I don't know. Whatever the vendor is at PAX East with all of the delightful Pokemon brand mashup T-shirts, because I gave them way too much money this weekend. I ended up buying like 3 shirts for me, 3 shirts for Maureen, and then I ended up buying a couple for Hat and sending them to him. But I now am the owner of a Dr. Piplup as opposed to Dr. Pepper shirt. I have a Whale Mart as instead of Whalmer and Walmart, and a Duncan Diglett shirt, which I am very happy about.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, and Maureen got the Chipotle Reptilian Grill and like a Pokemon Ghostbusters shirt, and I forget. I don't think Pika Hut was one of the ones that she ended up getting, but it was one of the ones she was thinking about. So yeah, it's but those are all delightful, and they have a website, but like they never have these shirts on their website, probably because they'll get sued. So because Nintendo is not known for being excited about things that are using their IP, but they have like a huge spread of them at PAX every year, and I just end up giving them too much money, and I'm glad to do that. So.
That's the glory of conventions, right? Is like they're big events where you can find all this stuff that people don't have time to track you down and sue you over.
Yeah, exactly.
But you couldn't have an online presence of it. Yeah.
All right. Well, I will concede first to my twin brother, who was the DM for our Pathfinder campaign, for dealing with my being like, come on, I only got 2 turns on my time stop and then I died. And also just for running a really fun campaign for the past few years, really. As well as Concede to Repo Man, who was posting in the Discord about how they got their first ever legend with Highlander DH, and we're really enjoying that. That was pre-patch. And also Concede to all of our Battle of the Discord participants, and to those of you who, I know not everyone is necessarily able to participate on a particular weekend for a couple days. But thank you everyone who was interested, and thank you everyone who represented us in that tournament. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So that will do it for us for this week. But until next time, keep calm and freeze face forever. And if you see us on ladder, concede.
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 All life must end. I yield for now. I concede. Well fought. I concede.
You win this one.
The victory is yours.
You have bested me.
I give up.
You win this one, friend. You win this time. I choose death.